An employee's email signature might not seem like a big deal until audit season. Outdated legal language, missing disclaimers, unapproved edits. If signatures aren't centrally enforced, you cannot control regulatory exposure. And the more your organization grows, the more that exposure scales. Exclaimer is email signature management built for IT. One dashboard, centralized control, audit trails. Visit exclaimer.com to start your free trial.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Damn, I was trying so hard.
You've forgotten your opening line.
No, I didn't. I've got it written down in front of me in giant print on the screen. It's just that you were doing that bomb thing underneath the countdown. Like some sort of older people in the audience will remember Robert Robinson, the man with the worst comb over in television
That's
history.
a shocker, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? He used to
Ask the family.
Ask the
That brings back
family.
memories.
And
God, they were also middle class as well, weren't they?
Call my bluff and various other things. But
Yes.
he had a habit when he was waiting for someone to answer a question of going boom, bada boom, and that's exactly what you did when you were trying not to count in. All I'm going to say to our listeners, Kieran, is that we both might seem good. We're recording this slightly later than we normally do. Normally we're apologising for recording early, but we're recording this late on a Wednesday night. So late that I had to shoo a fox out of the way of the office. And he wasn't up for being shooed. I did wonder why Smudge had come in rather more rapidly than normal. He was a big old unit. We had a discussion about why he wasn't doing what he should be doing, which is rooting out KFC from bins, but he eventually agreed to move out of the way, which is rather felt like I was living in Sussex, Kieran, at some stage.
There's nothing wrong with foxes. Do a fine job.
I'm not sure what a fox's job is. What is a fox's job? Apart from looking cocky.
Well, yeah.
That's James Corden's job, so I've got... Basically, it's the only job he's got. He's done very well out of it. But I don't know where foxes fit in the food chain, Kieran, apart from...
They just
now see, it's beating
wander
both
around
of us.
and they upset Finley.
Do they?
Oh, yeah. Finley and fox poo.
Yeah. Fox poo, yeah.
Yeah, fox poo. He gets fox poo issues. Yeah.
Well,
it's not good.
A vet once told me that a cat will always beat a fox in a fight, and a fox will never take on a cat. But that vet hadn't met Smudge, so I'm not sure that theory would stand up, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, let's get on with the pod, Kieran, before it turns out to be tomorrow, which would be a first. It'd be a first for us. We actually finished recording on the same day that it comes out. It's Newsday, Kieran. I think, to be perfectly honest, we covered the biggest recent news stories on the Questions pod the other day, but they were so big, the Chelsea story, the Leicester story and the West Brom story. I think they had to be covered then, but it still left some interesting stories, and the first one comes from the head of referees in Italy. So I suppose he's the Italian version of Howard Webb in a way, isn't he, I suppose?
That's right. There's been some very serious allegations made about allocating referees. And if you look at the history of Italian football and the legendary Calciopoli scandal, where Juventus were, by all accounts, suggesting that friendly referees were appointed, it does bring back some rather nasty issues. So, this is a Mr. Rocci, and the Milan prosecutor is saying that he's been involved, or he's been approached about allocating certain referees for Milan matches. No indication, no allegations involving the club. But certainly if you take a look at the history of bribery in English football, and you go back to the 1920s and 30s when it was taking place and so on. Anybody that's watched Peaky Blinders will be aware that these things were a not unusual occurrence at sometimes. That it tended to be other parties rather than football club owners. I think that there's always been a perception that referees are untouchable, but we all have our individual biases as referees and so on. And some clubs seem to prefer certain referees.
Some clubs seem to not prefer Darren England, for example. You won't be surprised to learn, Kieran, I've never watched Peaky Blinders, for the very simple reason that everyone said to me, "You have to watch Peaky Blinders." Well, no, you've ruined it now. You don't know me well enough, do you? It's it's pausing only to say that The Athletic reported this week that Stuart Atwell hasn't done a Nottingham Forest game this season at home, which seems an interesting decision if that is correct, if the PGMOL have decided not to allocate a referee that Forest publicly criticised to their games. The financial aspect of this, Kieran, of course, is that if it turns out that this Italian Howard Webb has been allocating particular referees to particular games, then other teams who lost those particular games will be saying, well, hang on a second, we want those games replayed or we want financial reparation.
Yes, and there are huge potential consequences in terms of the Champions League places, because it has now become so lucrative, it has become so transformative as far as clubs are concerned. So therefore you can see why there would be ructions. And also, you moan about referees, and I will moan about referees, and I think every football fan in the country will moan about referees. And whilst you might say that they're rubbish, which again personally I don't agree with, that they make honest mistakes. When people start to accuse them of being corrupt, I always think that that's a step too far. If you or I tried to play a game of football, we would be rubbish, and that didn't mean that we were corrupt. We were just a bit past it, and so on. So I think these allegations in Italy, it's going to open a can of worms, and you can't you can't beat the Italians do scandal in a way which we really have to tip our hat to be perfectly frank.
Yeah, I'd like to categorically state, if only for legal reasons, that I don't think Darren England is either corrupt or rubbish. I just think he hates Palace. That's all. I mean, that's demonstrably true. If it comes to proving that in court, I can provide 25,000 witnesses, Your Honour. I'd also rather you didn't mention the Champions League at the moment, because the Bayern Munich PSG game last night, which most people agree is the game of the decade, if not the century, went unwatched by me because I had totally forgotten / taken no interest in the conversation that as part of an annual cost cutting exercise we'd got rid of Amazon Prime. I don't recall making that decision, and it's only a decision I realised had been made when I sat down to watch the game at 5 to 8 last night. So we had a frank discussion, I think it's fair to say, Ali and I, about apparently we decided to get rid of Amazon Prime but keep Disney. So if I'd wanted to watch a repeat of Pocahontas, I'd have been laughing, but I didn't. There's nothing more frustrating than watching the goals go in on your phone update, and you think I'm missing the best game in the world. How can it? Because oh my lord. FIFA.
Well, if it's any consolation, I missed it as well because I was invited by Sheffield United to go across and do a business breakfast, and they were fantastic hosts, and there's a new hotel at Bramall Lane, so I was there as well. But because it was the Championship, everybody was watching Southampton versus Ipswich, which has to be said, decent game.
Wasn't a bad game.
Again, my WhatsApp messages were ping, ping, ping.
Why were you still there if you were doing a breakfast?
Well, in order to be there for breakfast,
Oh, I see.
I had to go across the previous night.
I see a level of professionalism I can't quite get my head around. FIFA has been on our giant naughty step for quite some time, Kieran, but they've put some proposals forward for the international game that will put them on a lot of other people's naughty steps as well.
Yes, I think this is an acknowledgement by FIFA that some club owners want to spread the news when it comes to football. And this would allow individual leagues to host games overseas. Now, I've got to be honest, my first reaction was, tip of the iceberg. If it's a success, it will be repeated. But putting some feelers out, I got the distinct response from Premier League sources was that we ain't interested. This is not for us. We think that we are so successful a brand already, and we make so much money from having matches overseas, having matches domestically, and the impact that it has on local hospitality, the impact it has on the club megastore on the day that we're hosting matches, that they don't anticipate that, and also I think the Premier League does come in for some stick sometimes, which is warranted, sometimes it's not. It's fully aware that at the present time, it's probably not a good idea to be seen to be relocating matches overseas. But it is the direction of travel of FIFA. I think we've established that FIFA will do anything and everything for money. And there's no doubt that La Liga and Serie A in particular would enjoy this. I suspect it won't get very far with Bundesliga clubs. Because, again, it comes down to fan culture. And I'm not being rude. If it happens in Belgium, it happens in Belgium. Could you see the Old Firm match taking place in New York? There would be. You don't want 50,000 angry Glaswegians, do you?
Well, I don't know what 50,000 angry Glaswegians looks like, Kieran, but you've had tweets from 48,000 of them, so you've got much more insight into that than I have. You took the words out of my mouth, really, because I think the response to the Super League in England and Germany showed the governing bodies in both those countries that this is not the right time to suggest playing a game. And as you say, it's completely unnecessary. That's the first of three stories with a FIFA link, Kieran. The second one takes us to an analytics company called Sports Radar, an official partner of FIFA and UEFA, who are struggling to keep their share price going.
Yes, there's a lot of there's a lot of data which is gathered and sold to a variety of stakeholders within the game, both the leagues themselves, individual clubs, potential investors, and sometimes people who like to wager. But it looks as if Sports Radar, which is an official partner of FIFA and UEFA, so therefore they have to take some responsibility because we don't want FIFA and UEFA to be the Jimmy Carr of football governance, in the sense of, I think the easiest phrase is it grin and bank it, take the money, not do any due diligence, and then if there are issues to do with your partners, we go, well, nothing to do with me, Gov. But the reason why this is an issue is that it looks as if Sport Radar has gamblings to illegal gambling sites. So there's nothing wrong with a analytics company providing the gambling companies with legitimate data about clubs, because it helps them to set the odds, and they're there to get an edge, and they do that themselves. And we've got the likes of Bet365 and Jamestown Analytics and Matthew Benham's Smart Odds and so on, who aim to get an edge, and that is part of a broader issue in terms of talent ID and trying to get one over on the bookies. But if it's linked to illegal gambling sites, then you do wonder about the ethics of this all, because does that mean that punters who are gambling with these illicit sites are they being screwed over?
And I don't think we've mentioned this in any detail, Kieran, but off the back of this, of course, talking of illegal gambling sites, we saw a huge punishment for someone linked with illegal streaming sites this week. I believe that massive fine and some years in prison.
Yes. Known as, I think the phrase is, he's known as the Iranian. I presume that's something to do with coming from Iran.
I'm not an expert in this sort of thing, Kieran, but it could be a double bluff. I mean, it's not.
It could be.
It's not the sort of thing you want to be known as in certain parts of Washington, obviously.
That's right. So yes, and this is an intriguing one. There is no doubt that the Premier League, UEFA, and other significant bodies within football, they are now indulged in private prosecutions. They are employing private detectives as well to look into where these sites are making their money from, and it's a challenging one, because when you talk to fans, they say we think this is a victimless crime, or or players are paid enough money and football's surviving. So what's wrong with me getting one of these hooky devices? Whereas the Premier League and UEFA and the Liga and so on, and also remember we have seen the collapse of the French TV deal for a variety of reasons, but a significant element of that is the fact that when the French League sold the rights to a broadcaster and failed to deliver on the expected number of subscriptions, when the broadcaster took a look into this, it was found that piracy is rife in France, and B, the attitude of the French football authorities, and I don't like to stereotype here, was something of a shrug. And on the back of that, they pulled out. So yes, this is a very significant, and there is no doubt that some of the parties involved in selling streaming rights are connected to crime. Just as there are many other issues to do with football, including merchandise and so on, and tickets. Yeah,
the third FIFA story, Kieran, guess what, involves the World Cup. We've seen today Donald Trump, off the back of the failed or fake assassination attempt, whichever you prefer, say that the Department of Homeland Security needs to be revived and beefed up for the World Cup, which is slightly chilling news, considering you had America's own version of Amnesty International last week warning many people not to travel to the World Cup, certainly if they were from countries on various lists or if they were gay, etc. But FIFA were offering a pass to fans who wanted to speed up their visa interview appointment, and it hasn't gone down particularly well.
No. I think FIFA thought that this would be a feather in their cap and B, quite lucrative. But only 12,000 people have opted in to the FIFA Pass. Now, it wouldn't have been an issue for fans of England and Scotland, because you'd use ESTA and you just renew your ESTA as before. But that's...
Sorry, ESTA is what?
ESTA is effectively the Weaver visa? No.
The waiver visa.
The waiver visa,
yeah.
Yes.
Visa waiver.
It has been a long day. That operates for some countries, but not for others, where the United States operates a more cautious approach to people arriving from other countries. So it is messy. Some people having to pay substantial sums to get a visa, or effectively to pay a deposit. Some people were going to use this FIFA Pass, which doesn't seem to have. So 12,000 people. That's going to be a quarter of the people attending one match, and there's 104 matches. So it's not gone down particularly well, and that's not surprising. I don't want to keep going on about this, but I think we have to. A lot of fans don't feel particularly welcome at the World Cup because of FIFA's approach to ticketing, because of the charges as far as public transport are concerned. And I understand what's driving individual government or authorities to do that, because, again, FIFA have perhaps been a little bit vague as to the amount of support that they were going to give for the funding of security and transportation issues. And it's not looking great. So even though Gianni Infantino, who himself has made news because he wants a cavalcade in Vancouver of the same standard giving to Il Papa, the Pope himself. And I'm not convinced that Gianni Infantino is seen in the same light with the same degree of enthusiasm as the Pope.
Yeah, not this Pope anyway, but I'm also perfectly happy to suggest that Il Duce is probably what he thought of in the first place.
Yes.
He's probably been looking at his old pre-war home movies and going, fancy a bit of that.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
Now at McDonald's, a McDouble is $2.50, so you can get your gym gains on, or just get lunch for only $2.50. Get more value on the under $3 menu.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Interestingly, Kieran, we had an interview this week with Oliver Ash, the co-owner of Maidstone United, and Ben Clasper, the CEO, for want of a better word, of Dulwich Hamlet, who are a fan-owned club. And it's an interview that's caused a bit of a stir, but one of the things they both talked about was how the regulator, whose powers will go down as far as the National League, that didn't impress them very much. They weren't expecting the independent regulator to pay anything other than lip service to them. But it turns out this week that Premier League clubs, it seems, are also unhappy about the independent regulator, especially the cost and whether each club will pay the same amount of money.
Yes, I'm not surprised by this. The formal budget for IFR is around about £14 million. It looks as if the Premier League is going to be on the hook. Remember, this was the Premier League whose clubs were in favour of Super League, and the Premier League who had 2 or 3 clubs in favour of the domestic coup of English football, which would have been Project Big Picture. And now they seem a little bit shocked to find that they're going to be paying not all, but a very substantial element of the running costs. I find this not surprising because the Premier League is or has been lobbying for some time, we've been on the receiving end of lobbying as well, and there's nothing wrong with that. I will talk to anybody about my reservations about why we need a regulator, and B, my greater reservations about the ethics and the governance of the other governing bodies, which I think are a broader issue. So yes, it's £40 million. And then you go, well, hold on, Premier League, is this the same Premier League that's paid £400 million in agent fees last year? And is this the same Premier League that's looking at legal bills of £91 million in the last 2 years, an awful lot of which has gone on the Manchester City case? So yes, I mean you should hold all authorities to account, and that includes the regulator. But I think the regulator is going to be used as a pantomime villain by the Premier League in terms of costings, because the average salary of somebody working at the Premier League is I reckon it's around about 140 grand. They're not paying small salaries, and that's their average is, I think, is more than David Cogan's, who's picking up himself. So I think you have to be a little bit cautious, Premier League, and perhaps look in the mirror first before you make these statements.
Talking of Man City, Kieran, just in passing, you shared a fantastic piece from a lawyer about the Man City case. Now, normally a lot of the stuff you share, I take one look at and think, I don't understand this. I'll tell him I read it and hope that he doesn't ask me any questions about something in the middle of it. But this guy basically gave 8 options for why the Man City case may not have been resolved yet, or may not have been publicised yet, including things like the illness of one of the judges, the fact that a secret deal may be done, and basically dismissed all of them in favour of it's such a complicated case, they may well not have yet reached an agreement.
That's right, and he also pointed out, and I think we've mentioned this as well, that the 3 people who are forming the decision are at the elite end of the legal profession, and therefore are in huge demand themselves. And he said, and this was the first time. We don't know who these 3 people are, but he did specifically. I've seen that, and this is a guy called Christian Smith, who I think he's the editor of the Lawyer magazine, and I thought he set it out superbly. The 8 options and whether this was low, medium, or high risk, and for those people who say we're never going to get a decision, we will get a decision. It's we as football fans, we are by nature impatient, and it's awkward that we've got yet another title running in the Premier League, and what happens if this judgment comes out after that? How would Arsenal fans feel? And they would probably feel the same way that they would have felt 2 or 3 years ago when they finished second to Manchester City, if that decision had been made then. So I think I would say it's essential reading if you want to understand how the legal profession operates. And we have been in touch with some lawyers, and we will be having an Ask the Lawyer event coming up soon, and we'll also our friend of the show, Nick DeMarco, is coming on, so we'll be having an Ask Nick show as well, and we will be contacting listeners to say, you send the questions to us, and we'll put the questions to the people involved.
Do you know? I think it must really annoy all our secret lawyers. We've got several secret lawyers.
We do, yes. We do have a lot of secret lawyers. Yes.
And we always mention our lawyers. We go, our lawyers, and then we go, and then there's Nick. So if I was one of the lawyers that wasn't Nick, I'd be going, all right, why don't you marry Nick then? If you're so in love with Nick, get Nick to do your Q&A.
Yeah, but there's lots of people I like in music, but I've only been pictured with Sophie Ellis-Bextor.
That's true. That's really stuck with you. Have you done? What happens if we get a picture of you with Robert Smith?
Oh well, that's she'd understand.
Yeah, she probably would. You'll have to ask for your own picture with Robert Smith. I'm not facilitating that for you.
Yes, I would. Yes.
In fact, if you and I found ourselves at the table next to Robert Smith, I think the only thing I would say to him was, "You're a bit too old to be wearing a jumper that don't fit, aren't you?" Essentially. This next story, Kieran, on the face of it, about Chelsea women, is a good story. But the trouble is, partly thanks to you, I'm so suspicious about the ownership of Chelsea now that I'm reluctant to say any story about Chelsea is a good one without having you confirm it first.
Well, no, this is an announcement. Chelsea women's team have played their matches historically at Kingsmeadow. And from next season, they're going to be playing them all at Stamford Bridge. Now, that is an opportunity to grow interest in Chelsea's women's team, which I think is a positive. We've seen Everton play Everton's women's team and playing all of their matches at Stamford Bridge. And there's another story to do with women's football in the sense that Brighton have said they're actually building a dedicated women's stadium, which is going to be next out. So it does show, I think, there is confidence along the lines of build it and they will come, or offer more significant facilities, and you'll grow your crowds. My reservation with Chelsea, and this is twofold. Arsenal have, I think, are the trailblazers here, in the sense that they have consistently delivered attendances in the tens of thousands for their WSL team, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. I think there's a separate issue in terms of the pricing of tickets, and getting pricing right is always a challenge. What happens if Chelsea's women's team attendances double from, say, 3,000 to 4,000 to 6,000 to 8,000 in a 40,000 capacity stadium? You are rattling around in it. And if you are trying to get sponsors, if you are trying to encourage hospitality, well, people want to be associated with success. And a stadium which is 2/3, 3/4 empty, whatever it's going to be, doesn't look like a success. So I think that's going to be the issue for Chelsea. But the reason why my spidey senses were tingling a bit, it's that Chelsea's men's team, which owned Kingsmeadow, sold Kingsmeadow to Chelsea's women's team. Now, if they were planning to move from Kingsmeadow, why buy the stadium? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. And it was a pure coincidence that it generated, I think, around about £12 million of profit for Chelsea's men's team, which of course would have helped them in their PSR calculation. I'm not saying the two things are linked or there's anything Machiavellian whatsoever taking place, but it does seem to be that there's a lack of joined up thinking and there's a lack of planning at the club.
I would suggest that the tone of your voice indicates that you are suggesting that something Machiavellian has gone on. I think what I'm looking for, Kieran, here, on behalf of Chelsea fans, is a reassurance that moving the Chelsea women to Stamford Bridge is purely a positive thing, and isn't, because we've become so conditioned now to be suspicious about anything that Chelsea do, as I say, that it isn't part of a cunning plan to reduce their PSR deficit or SCR whatever deficit in the next year or so. That it's purely an altruistic gesture because the women are so successful they've outgrown Kingsmeadow.
Yes, yeah, I think it's good for the women's team. If they can get 20,000, 25,000 there, that's good. If it's going to go to 7,000 or 8,000, I think that there's an issue. The positive again is that there must have been consultation with the ground staff, because you are increasing the number of home matches which are taking place at Stamford Bridge, and they must be happy with it. I think that the downside, and this again was one of the things I picked up from the announcement at Brighton, was that a pitch which is conditioned for men's football isn't necessarily in the best interests of women's football. And if you recall, when we had the groundsman of Leicester City come on the show, he said that they would, if Jamie Vardy was playing, he would actually have an extra cut or put extra this or that to make the grass more akin for a sprinter, as opposed to if you were having a sort of traditional centre forward. Then you want something which is perhaps a bit more springy in terms of jumping. So there's a broader issue in terms of the amount of injuries that we're seeing in the women's game. And here I think sports science can make a difference. I just get the feeling that was not at the forefront of the decision made by the head honchos at Chelsea.
Yeah. You used the phrase there, I presume the ground staff were happy, which indicates you haven't met as many ground staff as I have, because I can't imagine many things making ground staff. They're like bass players. They're not the cheeriest people in the world, and telling ground staff they've now got 2 games a week, 3 games a week, or 4 games a week ain't going to cheer them up. We can't give the exact date yet because we're still negotiating. But we will have an interview within the next 4 or 5 weeks with a very senior figure from the WSL, Kieran, and
yes.
we will be asking for questions from our listeners, but we're really excited about that because it's been a long time since we had a proper catch-up with what's happening in women's football. Our last few news stories tonight, Kieran, as we head towards daylight, involve tickets and the price of football. Finally, we get to talk about the price of football for fans. First of all, not a brilliant week for Wolves fans with relegation being confirmed, but I think an appropriate response from Wolves themselves when it comes to ticket prices.
More matches for less money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the long and the short of it. Yes, they've announced season ticket price reductions of 25% or more. Some have been up to 40%. I think there's one or two which are, because of the way that they've been sort of recalculated, are perhaps a wee bit less. But it's an acknowledgement, I think, by Fosun, who are the owners of Wolverhampton Wanderers, that it hasn't been a good season. There has been a breakdown in the relationship between the fan base and the owners. And because they've not delivered in terms of results, they're going to reduce prices. That's after increasing prices in the last few years. So, but even so, for Championship football next season, it will be cheaper. And the aim here, of course, is to encourage fans to renew, because anybody that's watched some of the matches in the EFL Championship in recent weeks, and this is not a criticism, I love the Championship, would have said, blimey, there's an awful lot of plastic on view. Yeah, there's an awful lot of blue or red seats or whatever they happen to be, and therefore clubs have to work out a strategy for this.
Well, I suppose that's partly down to the fact, Kieran, you've got a lot of big teams in the Championship with big grounds, who they will sell out in the Premier League, but even for important games, you're trying to sell 35,000, 40,000 tickets for a Championship game, and midweek it's not necessarily an attractive proposition, is it?
Yes, and I was talking to somebody from a League One club today, because I was just asking their opinion of the new EFL TV deal, which has increased the number of matches which are available. And he's saying, well, we're getting more money, but we only get 12% of the deal from this revised deal with Sky. But we have noticed a negative impact on attendances, especially towards the end of the season, and even more so on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, because you can watch practically any EFL deal match which isn't taking place at 3:00 on a Saturday now live on television. And they say, even when we're trying to encourage fans, many of them are voting with their feet, and I think this is always an issue when you're going to broaden the means through which people can consume football.
Yeah. And of course, not every club are reducing season ticket prices, Kieran, or ticket prices. We saw around 5:00 on Saturday, 50,000 Scousers unaccountably angry at Daniel Munoz for simply lifting the ball over a goalkeeper who was quite clearly feigning injury. I don't know what else they expected him to do when he quite clearly realised he was out of position, went down holding his leg. The fact that Munoz looked up and thought, well, I've got a choice here. I could stop the game, or I could just lift the ball over his head into an empty net and see what happens. The correct decision, as it turned out. But earlier in the game, Kieran, it was a huge, visible protest from Liverpool fans holding up the yellow cards.
That's right. The owners of Liverpool Football Club, FSG, the Fenway Sports Group, they have announced that for the next 3 seasons, that ticket prices are going to rise in line with CPI, which is consumer price inflation. Now, I think the view of Liverpool season ticket holders, especially those in the COP, is that part of the reason why Liverpool is so popular as a club, as a global brand, is due to the iconic nature of the COP, and whilst I think there's less hostility towards increases in the price of match day tickets, you're committing yourself effectively in March or April, as you and I have done for many, many years, to 19 matches next season. We don't know when they're going to kick off. We don't know whether the club's going to invest in new players over the course of the summer, but we do so in the sort of that unwritten contract, that sort of blind faith that we all possess. And I think Liverpool fans whenever I go to Anfield, I'm always struck because I tend to go to the same pubs each time, by the depth of knowledge of, and this is not a dig at the more tourist fans, of the depth of knowledge and of Liverpool fans who are locals, and they do feel that the owners who bought the club for £300 million, and Liverpool is now worth around about £4 billion, that they're not saying, when they're saying that they shouldn't cash in, or that they shouldn't have done very well out of it, they're saying, well, they've done very well out of it, but they're now taking us for CPI. And at a time when there is the Trump war, which is having an impact upon prices, that's driving up inflation, so that will be increasing the prices of season tickets going forwards as well. And as one of the Liverpool fans said to me, I don't have a dog in the fight in the war. I do have a dog in the fight. Everything's going up in price. My petrol prices are going up, this, that. And the football club has just said, because everything else is going up, we think you should have to go and pay more money as well for your season ticket. And it does seem quite incongruous that decisions which are being made on a global macroeconomic level by politicians is going to have consequences for individual football fans. And the trouble is, if it's 4% and 4% and 4%, that's not 12%. That you compound that and it's higher, and it's higher of a figure which itself is not cheap. I mean, tickets in the COP are not the most extortionate, especially compared to some of the London clubs, but these are significant rises.
I can't speak for the Fenway Group, Kieran, obviously, but it seems to me that there's no logic in using that consumer price inflation figure as a reason to raise the ticket prices, and B, there's a degree of cynicism there as well, in that they're implying that they had no choice but to raise tickets by that number, and when in fact the consumer price inflation figure is simply a statistic given out by the government or whoever gives it out. It's not an instruction to raise prices, but it's the fact that they say, well, what choice do we have? It's almost like they're saying we've been told to reluctantly increase our prices, and they haven't. Other clubs, as we're going to discuss in a minute, are able to subsume that cost, but Liverpool, for some reason, don't seem to be able to do that, even though with the new stand in the past season and a half, they've got an extra 7,000 people coming through the door every week anyway.
And those are 6,000 or 7,000 people who are not season ticket holders, so therefore, the aim of FSG, and I think it's always important to separate. We talk about Liverpool making a decision. No, this is John Henry making a decision. Billionaire John Henry, multi-billionaire John Henry, John Henry who was behind Super League, John Henry who was behind Project Big Picture, all of which were decisions made to increase the wealth of John Henry. So, not that I'm having a go at him personally, of course. And then when you actually do the sums, it works out as probably around about £1.2 million increase from season ticket holders. And you go, well, hold on. Liverpool get €2 million from winning a group game in the Champions League. They get £2.6 million from being sixth instead of seventh, or third instead of fourth, as far as the Premier League itself is concerned. So that the amounts involved on a macro level aren't that big as far as the club's overall finances are concerned, but it's just adding to what's an already fairly tough economic environment for many people, including football fans, because we're already paying, in order to get to the match. Transport prices are up, other costs are going up in terms of food and drink and so on. There is tragic news to announce. My favourite restaurant in Brighton, and where myself and the Baroness, we had our first proper date in Brighton, that's just announced that it's closing. And we've been going there for 15 years or more, probably more. Everybody's being impacted, but not everybody is simply able to say, we're just going to pass on these costs, or we're going to pass on inflation to consumers. Some football clubs do it in the knowledge that they can get away with it. And that's what Fenway Sports Group and John Henry are doing. They know that they'll get away with it, so therefore they've done it. Doesn't make it the right thing to do.
I'm sorry to hear about your romantic restaurant, Kieran. I really hope their closure is nothing to do with the fact that you spent more time surreptitiously checking web sheets under the table than you did eating their, I'm sure, delicious starter. What added a little bit of spice to the Liverpool fans' demonstration on Saturday, I beg your pardon, was the announcement by their opponents, Palace, and Manchester City, that they were freezing season ticket prices for next season. Now, I'm sure Steve Parish will be delighted at the implication from some Liverpool fans that the announcement was deliberate, that they wanted to help embarrass the Fenway Group. I doubt very much if that was the case. And I can't speak for Man City fans, but the news has gone down very well amongst Palace fans that season ticket prices have been frozen for next season.
Yeah, I think both clubs deserve to be applauded for this. It's an acknowledgement that fans are finding things tough, and also this isn't a dig at Crystal Palace or Manchester. It's an acknowledgement that both clubs have very significant proportion of their fan base is local, and they are not in affluent areas of the country. And therefore, fair play to them. Fair play to them. Yeah, and City have got increased capacity to sell next season. But as I was talking to somebody connected to City. He says, "Look, we're going to be in the Champions League. The Champions League is generating more money every season. We don't have to take the fans. City are conscious also that they won in the FA Cup against Southampton, but there were empty seats." He says, If you'd attended Wembley 23 times in 8 or 9 years, what exactly do you expect people to do? Especially when it's only, I know it's not saying it's only an FA Cup semi-final, but it's an FA Cup semi-final when you've been in sort of 7 or 8 of them since the new owners acquired, and it's against a Championship side. And then there's a further issue of the ticket prices. And earlier today, I saw the ticket prices for the final, and the Premier League, the Football Association said, that the cheapest tickets are only £40, but there's not many of them.
Yeah.
So you look at some of the other prices and you go, blimey, O'Reilly.
Well, also with Palace, and it's one of those rare occasions when fans imply something good coming out of the club rather than something bad. There are many Palace fans talking about the fact that we've pretty much taken 12 to 1,500 to every away game in Europe for the first time in our history. The prices for the home games in Europe have been quite expensive. So, 12 to 1,500 is a significant proportion of our home attendance. So, I doubt whether the club is actually acknowledging that they've spent a lot more money this season, but it is something else to bear in mind that the real hardcore Palace fans have probably spent an extra £1,000 following their club this season. More than that, I imagine, if they've been to all the European games, an extra £5,000. Which brings us to our last story, Kieran, which seems to me, considering we spent the last 15 minutes talking about the increase in prices for football fans, this last story seems almost counterintuitive.
Yes, and this is a story from me.
Oh, okay, right.
Because I was travelling to Sheffield from Liverpool.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do with myself? Other
Look
people
out the window.
look out the window,
Read a book.
talk to a fellow passenger. I thought, I know, I'll get my spreadsheet out. And I went through the attendances of the Premier League last season, and the number of matches played at home, and I made adjustments for domestic cup matches because the money split 50-50. Yeah, so I was in nerd nirvana as far as I was concerned. But what was intriguing was that overall, the cost to a fan, now that's not the same as how much the Premier League get, because we as fans, we have to pay an extra 20% over what the clubs get, because we have to pay VAT on ticket prices, actually went down from £51.93 in 23-24 to £51.14 in 24-25. So, well, does this mean that clubs are reducing ticket prices? And I'll be honest, the answer is no. And this is a classic case of there's lies, damned lies and statistics. Spurs were not in the Champions League in 24-25. So therefore, whilst they were in Europe, they had to go and cut their cloth accordingly. Manchester United were in the Premier League in 23-24, but they weren't in it in 24-25. So again, you cannot charge the big bucks. Chelsea were in the Europa Conference. Again, that meant that they had to go and price to sell as opposed to price whatever they fancied, knowing that people would turn up because the opposition was Real Madrid or Juve or whoever it's going to be. So we had sort of three what I would call significant players, three members of the Big Six who were not in the Champions League, and that had a significant impact upon pricing levels. The clubs that were there in the previous season, Luton hadn't charged very much, but I think Leicester and Southampton charged a wee bit more, and so on. So there were genuine reasons, but it's still coming up as the average ticket price is over £50 per match, and you and I are old enough to remember, and again, I'm not trying to over-romanticise things, of starting off our love affair with football, where it was measured in coins rather than notes.
Well, not only that, Kieran, but if you say that the average ticket price is £51.14 in 2024-25, then when you factor in £7 for a pint of beer in most, even if you're out drinking in the cheapest pub in the area, you're paying £6 for a pint of beer, plus your food, plus your travel, you're looking at £150 a pop.
Yeah.
That, if you're taking your two kids, you're looking at, well, I don't know how much. So I also, just before we started recording, I watched the end of the first half of the Arsenal game in Madrid. And there was a very cute. Arsenal scored a penalty. It's not a spoiler because we're finishing way after the game's finished. And there's a very cute 5-year-old child in the Arsenal away end. And Ali went, "Oh, look at that little 5-year-old child celebrating the penalty for Arsenal." And my first reaction was, "How's he got enough points to get an away ticket?"
Yes.
If I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be even more cross. He's 5. He hasn't got enough points to get an away ticket. He's either been sneaked in, or I don't know. Maybe he's a director. I don't know. Maybe he's a director of the Arsenal youth team. Who knows? But what should have been a joyous occasion was turned by Mr. Curmudgeon into a really bitter cross. Also, I'm glad you said the word spreadsheet there, Kieran, as I realised I used the phrase web sheet earlier on.
Yes.
Which is maybe partly because I was thinking about Bolton Stadium today, the tough sheet stadium. So that's subconsciously. Also because we're both very tired, so this is a good time to finish, Kieran. Don't forget you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you will get ad-free listening, access to our full back catalogue, bonus episodes, Zoom quiz invites and much more. Just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and you can find us on YouTube. And if you want to buy one of our books or one of our T-shirts, you can go back to that very same website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Tuesday with our next questions episode. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell. Also, a massive weekend coming up in the Championship, Kieran. We find out who's going to get promoted. Could be Millwall. Kieran.
Fantastic. Well, I won't give the traditional farewell because I've just had people. We're lifting the veil here. It's gone 10 o'clock on Wednesday night. This show's got to go out Thursday morning. And producer Guy has just sent a very polite, because producer Guy is very polite.
Yeah.
Any idea what time you're finishing tonight, guys? Producer Guy, we're finishing now.
Yeah, it's slightly past his bedtime, isn't it, really?
Yes.
He tends to go to bed when the banks close. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.